All right, we are here for part 2 in the series that I'm titling How to Improve Your Handwriting. Highly recommend you go watch part 1. Got mixed reviews, but I thought about it and I still think it's the most important thing I can say about handwriting or you just learning a skill in general. You just have to go watch it. It's 9 minutes long. Bear with me, bear with my rambling. And I think it'll do you a lot of good to hear what I have to say in that first video. But now we can get into a little more practical, hands-on stuff as far as what it means to improve your handwriting and to create good handwriting. So I think the first thing to talk about when you're talking about improving your handwriting is, what are you trying to improve? What's the goal? What is good handwriting? What does it even mean to have good handwriting? And I think, it depends on what your goals are to some degree. If you're writing for other people to read it, then legibility is an important thing. If you're writing, and then legibility, obviously might be the most important thing. For somebody else, maybe legibility isn't that much of a concern. Maybe you're writing for yourself. Maybe you're writing for artistic purposes. And therefore, a beauty or style might be more of an important thing for you. So figure that out. But I think regardless of whether you're going for, if you're writing for communication purposes or for artistic purposes, consistency is what it's all about. Consistency creates beautiful handwriting. I'm really not sure what other word could sum up why handwriting is beautiful, why somebody would call a certain type of handwriting good. I think this really encompasses it, and you can break it down into a number of categories. And these are kind of categories that consistency has been traditionally broken down into, by teachers of handwriting from the past. So I'm really just borrowing from them, which I think is fine. No need to reinvent the wheel here. So the first one I want to talk about is size. Obviously, size is something that if it's not consistent, people are going to notice that. They might not notice exactly what isn't right about the handwriting, but that'll be it. So if you have an A of this size, and then let's say you're writing the word and, if it's not the same size, this N, we need to write this either like this, capital A. This is block printing, so I'm using all capitals. Or we need to make them all the same size. Pretty straightforward. And that kind of also hits on like baseline and waistline, or in this case, top line, I guess I would call it. And if you're writing it two different sizes, capital A's up here, then your lower letters are down here, but everything hits the baseline. Very basic. Look for that in your writing. Take a look and see, where are the tops of my letters not consistent? And we will look at an example of some great handwriting that I found, and we'll look at all of these elements as we go through them. We'll look at them in respect to an actual example of handwriting. All right, the next one is slant. So with slant, especially with cursive scripts, say we have an I, say ing. Oops. All right, now this isn't perfect, but the slant of this is fairly consistent. And when you want to look at the downstrokes, mostly in your writing, when looking for that consistency of slant, the upstrokes are going to be at a different slant, so you don't want to look at those. But here, so this G, if I had to nitpick on this, we can see that this slant was a little too slanted. It should have came down more like this. It's not bad though, and most people wouldn't even notice that. But obviously, let's say you're writing, let's write this again with poor slant, obviously we have some slant issues here. So, our I is fairly upright. Then we have a few different slants. The N is well slanted within the letter, but it's on a different slant than the I, and then the G is way too slanted. And you can see, I don't want to get into the definition of beauty, but I think if we're going for consistency, most people are going to say that this looks better than that. 1 is better than 2. All right, let's keep going. Spacing. 2 kinds of spacing to worry about here. One is going to be between letters and the other between words. So let's just say we had the word and. All right. Now cursive's difficult because there's connections which kind of obfuscate the spacing a little bit, make it hard to see, where does the letter end and where does it begin. But I think it's helpful to look at the downstrokes again. So like in a word like and, if I'm looking for good spacing, I'm looking for equal spacing between these 2 strokes and these, and then where this D starts too. So right where the D connects right where the connector stroke hits the loop of the D, and then where this downstroke on the N. Those are the kind of spacing I'm looking for. And I'm looking at white space. This white space matches that white space. That's the kind of stuff I'm looking for. Okay. Block printing, it's a little easier. But then you also want to have consistent of spacing between words. So let's say I had another word here, and then another one here. I'm looking where does this end, where does this begin, where does this end, where does this begin. This one's a tiny bit wider than that one, but it's pretty close. And the better you have consistency of these spaces between words, just the better your script is going to read, the more likely somebody's going to think of it as beautiful. All right, next one is forms. Now, this gets a little trickier. If you're using an exemplar, if you're following, let's say, business penmanship, cursive, or maybe italic writing exemplars, you have something to look at, and people use those scripts because they've been developed over time. People have done a great job of defining a consistent style of script across all of the letters in that script. So all of the letters go together. All of the elements of the letters go together. But if you're using your own handwriting, you might have some elements in your handwriting where things don't quite go together. And an example would be, let's say you have an A. Let's say you have a very plain A like this, but then your B is like that. Now, this isn't too bad. Those don't necessarily clash, but I wouldn't say they go together perfectly. This just has this much more aggressive stroke, takes up more space vertically. It's definitely like a looser kind of letter than this A. This A is very tight and neat. So I would say that, if I wanted to make an A to match this B, I would do something maybe like that. Now we have this similar element of these strokes coming outside of the letter to complement each other. So when you're looking at your script or somebody else's script, you need to look for these elements. Where are there elements that don't quite fit together across letters? And then the more obvious type of consistency of forms is going to be between letters. So obviously, if you're writing one A this way and another way A that way, that's going to hurt the beauty of your script, because people are just going to see that and they're not going to get that consistent feel. They're going to look at it and say, oh, they're doing, that kind of hurts readability. They're expecting this, and then you throw this at them. That can be an issue in terms of people thinking of your handwriting as good or seeing it as good. And there's nothing like looking at great handwriting, which we're going to do right here in a second, where you have all of these elements, including the styles, including the forms, consistency of forms going and working all together. So this is from Reddit, from our handwriting, the subreddit. The user spoopty _ did this, and I really just like their script. It's not traditional, but it's so consistent. It has all of these elements. We're going to go through them all right now, and then we'll wrap this video up. Consistency of size. Look at, just look at the U. Traditionally, an S would be a little higher than a U, but not in this script, and that's fine. Same with the R's. R's are traditionally higher, but in this script, it's not. And she's consistent. He or she is consistent about that. Look at the tops of these letters. It's just great consistency here. I don't really see anywhere. Obviously, it's not perfect. If I got a ruler out, there'd be some problems. But I don't see any issues where the heights of these letters are varying too much. Obviously, the T's are higher, but if you look at all the T's, they're at about the same height, even across the line and on different lines. This one might be a little high, but if I'm nitpicking. And the D matches the height of that T, which is great. That's a great element. This D is a little high. That's probably, if I see any mistakes here, I'll point them out. That's the first one I see, is that the height of this D is a little too high for my liking, or it's just higher than the others. So there's a lack of consistency there, but it's very minor. The L's are obviously at a good height as well. Same height as the T. Sometimes in most scripts you'll see the L's go a little higher. Same with the B's. I like the height of this B. It's a little higher than the T, so the L's might have gone up a little more. Would have been great. I think a looped L would be really awesome for this script. That's if we're talking about, I was just talking about size. If I jump to consistency of forms, if I do see an elemental stylistic issue here with this writing, is that these L's are not looped. And the reason I say that is because you have something like an F that is looped. And you have a great F here. That's two beautiful loops. And you see it again here. And then you have these L's. I'm not even, full. Okay. It'd be great to see a loop right here. Now, a looped L is harder to execute. That looks weird because there's a cross between it, but I think an L, a looped L would just go great with the rest of the script. But then again, she has the B that's not looped. But even a looped B would be great too. I would consider adding a loop, but anyway, I just love looking at handwriting. I'm getting off track here. I'm not here to criticize Swoopty because I definitely admire it. I'm just seeing little things here in terms of consistency of style, overall aesthetic style. These are the things you want to look for. Slant, there's nothing to say about the slant. It's just boom, boom, boom. Everything's on. It's a very vertical slant. I love vertical writing when it's executed well, and this certainly is. So there's really nothing to say about the slant. I don't see any letters. If there's any one letter that could use some work with slant, it's these F's. So these F's, the loop of this F is on a little bit of a back slant. Do you see that? So you actually have the top loop is on this slant, and the bottom loop is on this slant. Minor nitpicking. Everything else is just really solid. The W could come down a little more, but that's fine too. Really solid stuff. Spacing, again, spacing's a little tough with cursive writing, but this is pretty good, and I'm not going to nitpick it. I'm just going to, the spacing between words is pretty solid. It can maybe be improved a tiny bit, but for the most part, I'm looking at the spacing between words. This came pretty close to the C, but if I'm looking at the overall white space between the two words, that works. It works for me. Same with here. It works for me. That maybe is a place where they could take this to the next level, though, in terms of really knocking down the spacing. But it's still pretty good, and it would be very difficult to improve it. So very good. I love this script. I love the work that they do. I wish Spoopty would post more. But all right, I'm going to wrap it up there. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Remember, we're talking about consistency. We're talking about consistency of size, slant, spacing, forms, and we're talking about consistency of forms. We're talking about consistency of both the overall aesthetic or style of the script between letters, and then also, obviously, consistency between each specific letter. So each of your A's are done the same way. Each of your B's are done the same way. And one final note about consistency is that that doesn't mean you have to have this rigid script where everything's exactly the same. I was looking at this person's script, which is absolutely beautiful, earlier, and this is so consistent, and it's very plain, but the consistency like really drives it home and makes it look great. It doesn't mean you have to write like this to be consistent. It doesn't mean you have to have this machine-like writing. There's so much areas for creativity. You can do something, every time you end a word with a Y, you can do a certain Y that's different than the Ys that you do in the middle of your words. Same with your G's or your T's or your S's. You can add these little stylistic elements all around your script to improve it and give it that creative element. Not that you need to, because again, this looks awesome, but don't let this idea of consistency box you in, and think that there's no room for personal stylistic elements and variation in your script. There still is. It's just that you have to do find the places to do variation, but be consistent in that variation. If you're going to cross your T's at the end of the word in a certain way, do it with every single word. And then maybe the last T in the end of a sentence, maybe you do it a little bit different, a little more, you add a little flourish to it. There's all kinds of areas where you can improve. So thank you for watching. If you want to follow me on Instagram, that would be awesome. I am perfect biscuits. Make sure I spell that right. Ooh. Perfect Biscuits on Instagram. Please follow me. If you like the video, please subscribe, and you'll get the next one whenever I put that out. I'm going to keep going in this series, I think. It's just getting started. This is part 2. And then, of course, if you like this video, please hit the like button, thumbs up button. That would be great as well. And if you have any questions, I respond to just about any serious question. I'll respond in the comments. Be glad to help you out and take your feedback, take your questions, whatever you have for me. So thank you so much for watching.